Hello guys, welcome back to another exciting Naruto fanfiction. Heart. If you're enjoying this series, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more amazing Naruto, which is what if Ino was Naruto's first true love. Part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. It was raining. Of course it was raining. Since when did the weather care about anyone or anything? The dark clouds hung overhead, casting a darkness on Konoha that didn't appear to be leaving anytime soon. As if there wasn't already a dark enough cloud hanging over the village already, a great weight hanging in the hearts of all its shinobi and citizens. Some argued that it was the heavens joining in the sorrow, crying alongside them. Ino wasn't sure about that, but she didn't mind the rain. At least in the rain, no one could see who was crying, even if everyone was. The funeral was a village-wide affair. Everyone had come to attend. How could they not? The whole village had been impacted by the invasion attempt. So many lives were lost so quickly, and so much destruction brought down on their head by those they had considered allies. It was heartbreaking. Everyone had lost something, or someone. The Chunin exams were supposed to be a time of celebration, of pride and prosperity between the allied shinobi villages. Instead, it now marked a dark day in Konoha's history, and the passing of yet another of its great Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the professor, the god of shinobi, had given his life in defense of his beloved village, fighting none other than his lost student, Orochimaru. In the end, none of the technicalities mattered now. Orochimaru disguised as the Kazekage, whom he had assassinated, leading the shinobi of Suna through deception to an act of betrayal. The unleashing of a tailed beast upon an unsuspecting village. The desecration of the bodies and souls of the first and second Hokage. The means no longer stirred in the minds of those who now mourned, only the end. The loss of loved ones, of homes, of innocence, and most importantly, of the peace that had held strong for so many years. As much as it was a heart-shattering loss, the death of the Hokage was also the marking of a new era. Peace was gone. Orochimaru made that clear. Once the wounds healed and the hearts hardened stronger than before, there was no questioning what came next. Konoha would respond in kind, and it would respond swiftly and without mercy. But for now, they could mourn. For now, they could join in the skies and water the earth to which so many had been laid to rest. Under the cover of her umbrella, Ino kept her head bowed, both in sadness and respect as words were said for the fallen heroes. But every so often, through the stinging tears, she would look through the crowd to one person. Naruto. He was, understandably, at the front of the service. It may have irked some people, but no one dared to say anything. Not today. It was no secret how much the Hokage cared for Naruto, and vice versa. Today, Naruto was free to mourn alongside his village, without judgment, as an equal. After his own efforts to stop the rampaging Ikibi, no one was as sure of their previous disinclinations for the young Jinchuriki. He had proved himself to not only his fellow shinobi, but to the village as a whole. There wasn't a soul within Konoha's walls who hadn't heard about, and subsequently gossiped about, the Kyuubi brat, saving the village. Ino didn't dare to disturb him right now. Over the past months she had learned how he tended to deal with emotional issues. She would give him the space he needed and swoop in when the time was right. She might have been distraught at the events of the past few days, but she couldn't even begin to imagine how broken Naruto was in this moment. The boy who had already lost so much, continuing to lose just that little bit more could push him over the edge. The rain still hadn't subsided by the time people started to depart. Eventually only a small number remained, Naruto obviously being one of them. Much to the surprise of Ino's teammates, she was also still waiting. As the crowd lessened, she slowly made her way closer and closer to Naruto, until eventually she walked up behind him and led him under the shade of her umbrella. "Hey, Ino," he said, not turning to look at her just yet. "You okay?" Ino knew it was a stupid question. He clearly wasn't. Naruto exhaled deeply. "Not really," he answered. "No surprise there. I just I know I'm supposed to feel something, but I can't. It just feels empty. Ino reached out and gently grabbed his hand, finally getting him to look at her. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying anymore. He had exhausted his tears for one day, and his face showed as much. Ino had never seen him look so tired before. Come on, she said, tugging at his hand. Let's get you home and into some dry clothes. You know the Hokage would be cross if he knew you got sick like this. Naruto didn't argue. He didn't have the strength to. He let Ino guide him, their hands never parting, as they made their way past the last of the stragglers and towards his apartment. Upon arriving at his front door, Ino pulled out a set of keys and opened the door, pulling Naruto inside and pushing him towards the bathroom. Go have a shower, she said. Get dressed and I'll have some ramen waiting for you. Ino, you don't have to, MMPH, his words were cut off as she clasped her hand over his mouth. Ino gave him a look of warning, her eyes promising pain if he dared to ignore it. Are you refusing my generosity, Naruto? He shook his head. Good. Now go. You're dripping all over the floor. She rolled her eyes as he closed the door behind him, not missing the whispered mutterings about her being too bossy for her own good. Entering the kitchen, she grabbed a pot and made quick work of starting to cook some miso ramen, making sure to add extra pork for Naruto. While normally she would be trying to divert his eating habits to a healthier, or at the very least, a more varied option, she figured this time she could make his favorite. She made herself a cup of tea before looking around at the apartment with a pleased smile. It had taken time, but she had finally got Naruto to incorporate some more plants to his living space. Ino made sure none of them were particularly fragile or needy, knowing that Naruto could be called away for long missions with short notice. Imagine her surprise when he had entrusted her with keys to his apartment, asking her if she could look after the plants if he was gone too long. She had been flattered that in the span of just a few short months she had earned his trust to such a degree, but she supposed that came with the territory now. What could he really trust her with that was any more daunting than the knowledge of the Kyuubi? Needless to say, Ino had immediately began using her access to Naruto's apartment for evil. Well, Naruto called it evil. She would tidy up the place when she was bored or when Naruto was gone on a mission. If anyone found out, they might consider it weird, but Ino didn't mind. It was the least she could do. Ever since that night, everything had changed between the two blondes. At first it was just them stopping for friendly chats instead of only swapping pleasant greetings. Soon it turned into inviting him along to her team's lunches, much to her team's curiosity. Eventually they found reasons to simply enjoy each other's company in other ways. The occasional training sessions quickly turned into a routine, from which they both gained surprising benefits. Ino was proud to say that her physical health had never been better, and it helped that Naruto was never shy about complimenting his friend's strengths right to their face. She still wasn't sure if he was knowingly messing with her when he did that, but she wasn't going to stop him. It wasn't like he ever acknowledged her blushing anyway. Ino wouldn't say that it was a surprise that her and Naruto had become fast friends. Everything considered, it was bound to happen. There was no telling if her finding out about the Kyuubi had simply sped up the inevitable, or if it had been a catalyst for something that would have otherwise never occurred. She liked to hope it was the former. She couldn't imagine a world where she continued to be mean to him forever. Eventually that smile of his would eat its way into anyone's heart, surely. She chuckled at that, remembering the first time she had bought him ramen at Ichiraku's. The poor boy almost split his face in half, he was grinning so wide. It didn't even matter to him that she only did it due to losing a bet with him. But after seeing that smile, she made sure those special occasions popped up a little more frequently. None of this was to say that their friendship was one-sided. Sure, she did as much as she could for him. At first out of guilt, but that didn't last long. Naruto was not the kind of person to take charity or pity lying down. At every opportunity he would go out of his way to make sure Ino was okay, helping her with everything from chores to just helping carry some groceries home for her. He lamely reasoned it as him making up for the fox nearly scaring her to death. Ino knew better though. After the first few weeks she could tell the two of them were just making excuses to spend more time together. She had to admit that Naruto was actually a very comforting person to talk to once you got past his overabundant enthusiasm for, well, everything. She heard the water of the shower turn off and fetched 2 bowls from the cupboard, dishing herself up a small serving of the steamy noodle broth as well. She put the bowl for Naruto on the table across from her, not waiting for him to join her before beginning to eat. It had become apparent very early on that Naruto cared very little, if at all, for etiquette. Speaking of which, damn it, Naruto, Ino yelled out, put a shirt on when a lady is present. Naruto blinked owlishly at her before looking down and mouthing a silent, oh. Disappearing into his bedroom, he returned with a shirt on and a mischievous look on his face. Are you saying you're a lady? Ino narrowed her eyes at him. Are you saying I'm not? She asked daringly, receiving nothing more than a cheeky smile. She rolled her eyes and pointed her chopsticks at the bowl across from her. Sit. It came as no surprise when Naruto managed to finish his entire serving before Ino, despite her starting before him. When it came to ramen, he was a bottomless pit. Thankfully he had the manners to wait patiently for her to finish before jumping up and taking both empty dishes to the sink. It was a strange really, this whole interaction. Normally, during such things the two of them would be chatting up a storm, or trading half-hearted jabs at each other endlessly. It made sense that today would be different. Ino wasn't going to question Naruto's more passive demeanor right now. He deserved this time to let his mask fall, to let the world see just how low it had gotten him, even if he was doing his best to maintain the facade. She walked up behind him while he cleaned the dishes. He was finding anything he could to keep his mind busy. He would never wash the bowls straight after the meal. With gentle hands she grabbed his arms. Those can wait, Naruto, she said, her voice so soft and full of warmth that it alone could have halted his actions. You can talk to me. You know that. Don't keep it all inside. I'm right here. His eyes were glassy again when he looked at her, a miserable downtrodden expression marring his bright features. I couldn't save him, he whispered. The Hokage? She asked, getting a nod. Naruto, no one could save him. Everyone tried. Those far stronger than us were just as powerless to help. Don't think for 1 second that it's your fault. But, I could have, he said, placing his hand on his stomach. I could have been stronger. If I could have used the fox, maybe none of this. No, Ino said sharply. Don't think like that. You know what happens when you use its power. She still remembered his recounting of the mission to Wave Country. The fear he had for what the Kyuubi's chakra had made him feel like, what it made him willing to do. Even now as he had started training to use it, it still made him uneasy. The last thing he wanted was to lose control. The Hokage would never have you risk your life like that. You know that. Everyone knows that. And I know that he would be damn proud of what you did. Naruto, you fought the demon of Suna, and won. Who knows how many lives you saved. But, no buts, she said, pulling his hand away from his stomach. You did a great thing, Naruto. You protected the village, and all of Konoha knows it. Don't let things out of your control overshadow that. Ino took a deep breath and calmed down. She reminded herself that an argument was the last thing either of them needed right now. Naruto would come to acknowledge his accomplishments soon enough. She just had to help him through things here and now. Gaara, he's like you, isn't he? She asked, trying to change the subject. Yes, but he is different, Naruto said. He's lonelier, scared. He is what I could have been, what everyone hoped I would be. A monster. No, Naruto said quickly. He's just broken. He needs help. A friend. Like you are to me. Ino smiled as Naruto took a hold of her hands as he said that last part. As awkward as he may have been at times, it was never a secret how much he appreciated their newfound friendship, and he reminded her of that often. You could have killed him, she said carefully. Why didn't you? How could I? He said. Ino nodded in understanding. While it took some digging in the library, they had found the history of the Jinchuriki. What little there was, that is. As soon as Naruto had learned there had been others like him, and that were more out there in the world, he had wanted nothing more to meet one. Now he had. She could see it wasn't what he was hoping for. He never said it outright, but Ino knew Naruto had hoped that the other Jinchuriki were treated better than he was. Those hopes were crushed with Gaara. But in its wake, she could see something else spark to life. Sparing Gaara wasn't just a whim or impulse. In his eyes, everyone deserved a chance, a fellow Jinchuriki more so. How could he possibly bring himself to kill someone who had never been given a chance to be anything more than a monster before? It wasn't in his heart to do it. I think I'm going to go to the training grounds, Naruto said. Ino pouted. You just got dry. Do you really think raging out in the rain is going to help right now? Naruto smiled. No. Arg, fine, she grumbled, shoving him away playfully. I'm using your shower. If I'm not here when you get back, I'll be at the shop. The flower shop would be very busy for a few days and Ino's dad would need the help keeping up. Grabbing a spare change of clothes out from a bag she conveniently left in Naruto's apartment for emergencies, she headed for the bathroom. Ino, Naruto called out, catching her just before she closed the door. Thanks. Slipping on his orange jacket, he left Ino in his apartment and headed for the training grounds. He knew she was just trying to help him talk about things, but he wasn't ready yet. Destroying a training ground wouldn't help, but he needed to vent somehow. If he was lucky, he would be able to find Jiraiya and hound the pervert to help him with some training. The rain had finally stopped. Repairs were already being planned, and as Sakura made her way through the village, she felt proud of how resilient Konoha and its people truly were. She hoped deep down that nothing like this would ever happen again, that their display of strength in fighting the invasion back would deter anyone else from attempting something so horrible. But she knew anything was possible. Since becoming a kunoichi, she had been forced to face the reality that life, and everything in it, was unpredictable. The loss of the third Hokage proved that. The man might have been old, but his strength and prowess had been legendary even at his age. He was a pillar of Konoha, always upholding his beliefs in the will of fire. Konoha wouldn't be the same without him. Sakura had stayed at the funeral for a while, doing her best to be supportive for her teammates. For the most part, Sasuke seemed to be handling it well, but she knew he was angry at himself for not being able to do more. No matter how much she tried to assure him that his efforts hadn't been pointless, he simply wouldn't hear it. She didn't push the matter too hard. The Uchiha had been through a lot, and who was she to judge his way of grieving? When it was finally time, she had walked with Sasuke back to his home, if only to make sure he knew he wasn't alone in this time. Much to her surprise, he did say a curtly thanks before leaving her in the rain. Baby steps were still steps. Wandering back to the site of the funeral, Sakura fully expected to see Naruto still there. She knew he was close to the third Hokage, even if she didn't fully understand their relationship, and it made sense that his passing would have a heavier effect on him. It would make sense that he would be here for as long as he could. She was surprised to find that of the few stragglers still mourning, Naruto was not one of them. A certain masked pervert, however, was still hanging around. Kakashi-sensei, she said. Sakura, the man greeted cheerfully. What brings you back here? Come to check on your dear old sensei. I'm flattered. Actually, I was wondering if you had seen Naruto, she said, looking around once more for the head of spiky blonde hair. I thought he would still be here. Kakashi smiled at the girl. It made him happy to see that his little team had come a long way since the bell test. Sure, they weren't as close as he'd wished, but the effort was there. Sasuke and Naruto had developed an adorable rivalry. They were constantly pushing each other to do better even if they wouldn't admit it. Sakura was doing her share too, and even though her attention was still heavily focused on the Uchiha, Kakashi could tell she was warming up more to Naruto. Naruto's noticeable improvements in socializing and not getting under his teammates' skin was also a very important step in the right direction. Such improvements in such a short time had left Kakashi curious, but a little bit of harmless stalking and a few eye-opening conversations with Asuma had told him everything he needed to know on the matter. Your compassion and concern for your teammates is a true embodiment of the will of fire, Sakura, he said. The third Hokage would be proud of you, as I am. He almost chuckled at the poor girl when her face flushed nearly as pink as her hair. Oh, how he loved stirring up his beloved students. Naruto was here not long ago. He left with young Ino, so I think he is in safe hands. Sakura furrowed her brow. Ino, are you sure? She asked. Kakashi nodded. Yes. They left heading towards Naruto's apartment. Very kind of her to walk him home. Weird, Sakura thought to herself, turning to leave for Naruto's place. Thanks, Kakashi-sensei. I'll see you tomorrow for training. Weird was an understatement. Since when did Ino care about Naruto? Sakura knew that her teammate was always running off to have lunch or dinner with Team 10, but she assumed that was to hang out with Shikamaru and Choji. Now that she thought about it, however, she did remember Ino asking a bunch of questions about Naruto a few months back. It had been weird then, but now it was suspicious. Sakura would be the first person to admit she didn't like Ino. At least, she would have been until they started to repair their friendship before the Chunin exams. She had to say, it was nice to finally not be at each other's throats. For whatever reason, the blonde had decided to drop her pursuit of Sasuke. Ino still boldly claimed that the Uchiha would realize what he wanted and choose her in time, but Sakura was beginning to question the sincerity of that statement. At the same time, Naruto had mysteriously stopped asking her out all the time and, as if by a miracle, had even learnt some manners in some sense. Oh God, there was no way. She would have known. She would have seen something, caught onto it before now. She could not have missed something so impossible. Sakura almost tripped over as her thoughts began spiraling out of control. With a deep breath, she regained her composure and increased her pace to Naruto's apartment. Sakura was convinced she was overthinking things. She had to be. Naruto couldn't keep a secret to save his life, and Ino, well, Ino could lie with the best of them. But there was no way. No way at all. Sakura was sure of it. Ino must have just been walking Naruto home to be kind in this dark time. Sakura would have done the same for him if she didn't need to walk Sasuke home first. Sakura hadn't even noticed she had worked herself up into a light jog until she was already coming to a sudden halt at Naruto's door. Shaking her head dismissively of the crazy thoughts, she knocked and waited, trying her best to think of what comforting words to say to Naruto. What did you forget this tea? Ino said, her words dying suddenly as she opened the door and came face to face with an equally shocked Sakura. Oh crap, she thought to herself, quickly smiling. In times like this it was best to act as if nothing was wrong. Nothing at all. Oh, hey Sakura, if you're looking for Naruto, you'll have to go find him. He went to blow off some steam at the training grounds. Ino, you, and Naruto, apartment, what the? Sakura stammered out, the gears in her mind colliding and grinding together in ways they simply weren't designed for. You're dating Naruto, she all but yelled, pointing accusing at the blonde. What? Ino returned the tone. I'm not dating him. Don't you think it's a bit rude to go around accusing people of things you don't even know are true? What gave you that idea anyway? Who said it? Sakura took a step back and gave the blonde an up and down glance, finishing with a questioning but knowing look. She gestured to Ino and where they were standing. Ino's eyes went wide and she looked down. She cursed mentally as she realized she was wearing one of Naruto's jackets, while in Naruto's apartment, and Naruto wasn't here with her. Oh, she said. This isn't what it looks like. Sakura said smugly, crossing her arms. Then what is it? 'Cause from where I'm standing you sure look guilty. Guilty. Guilty of what? Getting tangled up with Naruto and trying to keep it a secret, Sakura said. And doing a bad job of it too. I've had my suspicions for weeks now. This just proves it. She was lying, obviously, but hopefully Ino wouldn't pick up on that. A little white lie was worth pressuring Ino into admitting the truth, and Sakura needed all the details. But seriously, Ino, Naruto, of all people, I thought you were better than that. Ino reached out and grabbed Sakura by her dress, pulling her in close with a glare. You got something to say about him, billboard brow. Sakura couldn't help but grin victoriously. Oh, so protective already, she said in a sickeningly sweet tone. Ino quickly let Sakura go and stormed back into the apartment, muttering to herself about nosy pink-haired friends. Grabbing her bag and clothes, she marched back out, closing the door behind her and locking it, doing her very best to ignore the smug shit-eating grin she could feel directed at her. You have keys to his place. We aren't dating, Ino exclaimed. We are just friends. Of course, Ino, I believe you, Sakura said sarcastically. But I can't say that everyone else will. You know how people get when gossip gets around. What will your teammates think? The way she said it, the wicked smile on her face and evil glimmer in her eyes was more than enough to make Ino stop in her tracks. Checkmate. Ino pig. Ino narrowed her eyes. You wouldn't dare. Sakura chuckled menacingly. Ino, she chided. You know I would. Ino sighed in defeat. What do you want? At this point it didn't matter that she was telling the truth. Ino knew all too well how easy it would be for Sakura to twist what little she knew right now into what would no doubt become the talk of the village overnight. She didn't care if anyone knew she and Naruto were friends, that much she had never tried to hide. But it was different if people found out just how close they had gotten and how much Naruto trusted her. Neither her or Naruto knew how careful to be with that aspect of their friendship, and with the Hokage gone there was no telling what risks could arise. The last thing she wanted was to become a weakness for Naruto, a way for people to get to him. She also really didn't want to inflict upon him the embarrassment of a romantic accusation. He was far too sweet and innocent to handle that right now. I want to know everything, Sakura said. With a deep defeated sigh, Ino started towards the flower shop, gesturing for Sakura to follow her. I need to go and help my dad at the shop, she said. Come and help and I'll tell you everything after. She almost let out an audible groan of disdain as Sakura literally began cheerfully skipping to catch up. Why God, why? When they reached the flower shop, Ino was glad she had Sakura tagging along. Her father was swamped, and many customers were starting to get irate. Many were more sad than angry, only here buying flowers to decorate new graves that now held their families' or friends' names. Others were more patient, having only old memories brought up by the attack. Today was a day to mourn everything, it seemed. New wounds and old. It was exhausting, but with Sakura's help Ino was able to help her dad get most of the work done before night finally fell, for which Inoichi promised to pay them for. Thankfully he didn't feel the need to stick around after Ino offered to close up shop and left the two girls to themselves. All right then, Ino said, dropping herself into a seat. Ask. She regretted saying it as soon as the words left her mouth. Sakura's squeal of delight as she ran across the empty shop to join her might as well have been a death sentence. There was no way Ino was going to leave this conversation with all her dignity intact. She knew it, Sakura knew it, hell, even her dad probably sensed it. That would explain why he took her offer so easily and hightailed it out of the shop. The tension between the two girls had been perceivable by even the civilians passing by. How long? Sakura asked as soon as she sat down. I told you we aren't dating. Fine. Then how long have you two been hanging out all buddy-buddy like? A while, Ino answered vaguely. We started spending more time together a little while before your mission to Wave Country. Sakura blinked. Wow, you two sure kept things quiet. Ino scoffed. We weren't keeping it a secret. You just never paid enough attention to where Naruto went to notice. Sakura frowned. Ino wasn't wrong. but it sure made her sound like a pretty lame teammate. Why are you two even hanging out? She asked. I understand why he goes and has lunch with your team. Shikamaru and Choji are his friends. But it seems like you two have been spending a lot more time together than that. What kicked that off? Ino paused and thought about her words carefully. She couldn't just tell Sakura the truth, but she also needed to give her a believable answer. I tried to pull a prank on him. It failed, spectacularly. He pointed out what I could have done better and then helped me set up a prank for Shikamaru. I guess we just never noticed until we were already meeting up every other day to come up with new ideas. Trying to prank the prankster. You should have known better, Sakura said, seemingly accepting the answer. The keys to his place? She asked. I water his plants when you guys are on missions. Wearing his jacket. It was cold. His favorite food, miso ramen with extra pork, Ino answered without thinking, freezing only after she had said it. Sakura's grin could have rivaled Naruto's. And does he like it more when you make it for him or? Damn it, Sakura. I told you it's not like that. Does Naruto know that? Sakura asked. Of course he does. Ino said sharply. Why do you even care? Sakura shrugged. It's just all very surprising, she said. Can't blame a girl for being curious. I mean, come on, Ino. It's you and Naruto. Anyone would be curious what force of nature could get the two of you to spend time together. Ino scoffed. Sakura had no idea just how right she was. A force of nature was one way to describe the Kyuubi. The blonde hated to attribute her and Naruto's friendship to that cursed fox, but it was the truth. If not for her finding out his secret, she would have no reason to get so close to Naruto. Are you done? She asked, hoping this interrogation would be a short and easily forgettable affair. Sakura hummed thoughtfully. How can you stand him? She asked. He's always so over the top. Everything is all or nothing with him. I didn't think you would have the patience. At first it was infuriating, she admitted with a smile. But he grows on you quick. He's actually quite considerate once you calm him down, sweet even. Ino would die before she admitted that the best method she had found to calm Naruto down so far was to hug the idiot. Sakura was already getting too many ideas. Are you sure you didn't hit your head or something on a mission? Is it really so hard to believe that I gave Naruto a chance and he turned out to actually be a pretty decent guy? Sakura sighed in defeat. I guess not, she muttered. I was hoping for some juicy details. Oh well, I guess it's not so bad. It's not like you like him or anything. She narrowed her eyes as Ino quickly looked away and blushed ever so slightly. Right. Ino desperately fought down the blush, but to no avail. Sakura's evil grin was already forming again and that knowing look in her eyes spelled doom for the poor Yamanaka. It wasn't as if she had anything to hide. She was being honest. She liked Naruto, but not like that. Right. Oh no. What if she did? Was that wrong? Sure. She enjoyed seeing him, and he was such a nice guy, but it wasn't like she had ever thought about being with him or anything and, oh no, do I? She thought. Almost as soon as the idea had blipped into her poor mind had it lingered a second too long before being utterly squashed down by her own embarrassment. It was one thing to consider it, another to actually think about it, and Ino had just taken that all too dangerous step. It terrified her, not because of Naruto, or the Kyuubi, or how her friends might look at her for it. No, it had scared her because for that split second, that brief moment of panic, she had caught herself feeling happy at the idea. Did she really see Naruto like that? Had they really gotten that close so soon? For Sakura, this was a dream come true. Finally, she had the upper hand on Ino. Finally, it was her turn to feel the power one had over another with the knowledge of a secret. It was everything she had hoped. She watched gleefully as the poor blonde tried so desperately to look like nothing was wrong, the faint blush on her cheeks giving her away. Well, she started, her sickly sweet tone returning full force. I wonder what Naruto will think when I will end you, Ino hissed, silencing Sakura with a glare. You so like him, Sakura said smugly, grinning like an idiot. I don't know. Maybe. Kinda. I mean yeah, but, arg, Ino said exasperatedly. It doesn't matter, because you aren't going to tell anyone. Right. Sakura made a zipping gesture across her mouth. My lips are sealed, she said, letting her words sink in just enough to have Ino relax a little before. So, when are you going to ask him out? What? Naruto groaned as he stirred to the unmistakable sound of knocking. He could almost fondly remember a time when he had never been woken up to such a sound. What a wonderful time that had been. But a fond memory it would stay, because he wouldn't dare want that back if it meant losing what he had now. Slipping on a pair of pants, he groggily headed to the door while trying to wake himself fully, the knocking getting louder and more frequent as he went. I'm coming, he called out, unlocking the door and grabbing the handle. Geez, Ino, just use your key already. He opened the door, his face quickly falling as he was met not with the frustrated expression of Ino, to which he was now very accustomed, but instead to the all too interested expression of a certain inappropriate old man. Ino, huh, Jiraiya said. Don't tell me a brat like you has a girlfriend and didn't tell me. No, Ino's not my girlfriend, pervy sage, Naruto said. She's my friend. Jiraiya placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Ah, my poor uncultured student. Allow me to impart some wisdom on you, he said sagely. If your friend is a girl, and that girl has a key to your apartment, she is no longer just your friend. Naruto huffed and pushed the man away. Yeah, like I'm going to listen to a pervert like you, he said. But you're right. She isn't just a friend. She's my best friend. Jiraiya pouted and shook his head in shame. I have much to teach you. But fear not, for Jiraiya the Gallant will guide you on this most sacred path to manhood. And the training starts today, he said. Pack a back, brat. We are hitting the road. Huh, what for? We can just train at the training grounds. You and I have a mission. We are going to go and track down my old teammate, Tsunade, he said. And with any luck I can knock some sense into that thick skull of yours before I have to bring you back to your lovely Ino-chan. Do I have to? Naruto whined. Last time you said you were going to train me, you threw me off a cliff. It worked, didn't it? Why do we need to find your old teammate anyway? Naruto asked. I'll tell you all the details while we are going. Meet me by the gate when you're ready. I'll go let Kakashi know I'm stealing you for a while. Jiraiya said. Oh, and I'll even sweeten the deal for you. If you come and help me find Tsunade, I'll teach you a jutsu used by the fourth Hokage. Naruto watched as the man disappeared in a swirl of leaves before he could question what he had just heard. Not that he needed to hear any more. A jutsu used by the fourth Hokage was too good to pass up. Any ideas of going back to bed were gone as he tore through his apartment like a hurricane, frantically packing a bag and watering his plants. He considered leaving a note for Ino, but he knew that would just earn him a lecture about manners and consideration. The fact that he even knew the word consideration now was alarming. Just how much of an effect had Ino had on him? As soon as he was done packing, he sealed everything into a scroll and locked his apartment behind him. He didn't need to find Sasuke or Sakura. If Jiraiya was telling Kakashi, then they would find out from him in time. With that in mind, his one and only destination was the flower shop. Naruto hoped Ino was there, otherwise he was going to have to annoy Jiraiya and be late for the mission. It had been a couple days since the funeral, and Naruto hadn't seen her. He just hoped she wasn't on a mission as well, or his precious plants were as good as dead if he was gone too long. Ino absent-mindedly twirled a kunai in her hand as she walked back to her place some yards away from the training dummy. Without any visible effort, she spun on her heels as soon as she reached her desired distance and threw the kunai at the dummy. Bullseye. Reaching into her pouch, she pulled out several shuriken, sending each one flying with practiced ease, the same bored expression on her face as each hit their mark in the form of wooden planks hanging from the surrounding trees. She wanted to be engaged in her training, she really did, but hitting stationary targets just didn't do anything for her anymore. Ever since she started training with Naruto, using his shadow clones to perfect her accuracy, she had found that her old ways of training were useless. Shikamaru and Choji could neither produce shadow clones, nor were they willing to take the risk of acting as moving targets for her. At least they both didn't hold it against her that she was training with someone else, although Ino suspected it was because it took the heat off them. She still made it a point to try and drag them off their lazy butts and actually train, but there was only so much she could do. Asuma appreciated her newfound effort and enthusiasm for training, and Naruto was always happy to drop whatever he was doing if it meant training with her. Speaking of Naruto, Ino had specifically chosen not to bother him to come train with her. Actually, she had been avoiding him for a couple of days now. She hated doing it, but she knew she needed some time to think. Ever since her little heart-to-heart with Sakura, her mind just hadn't been able to rest. She was plagued with thoughts about what to do, how to approach it, and whether or not she needed to be thinking about any of this in the first place. All of this snowballing from a single, painfully simple, question. Did she like Naruto? She did. There was no point trying to hide from the facts. Naruto had grown on her in so many ways in such a short time, it was the most obvious thing to anyone paying enough attention. But that didn't make it easy. Admitting to herself that she liked him was easy enough, but to figure out to what degree, and to even bridge the thought of admitting it to his face was. Damn it. Her kunai missed its mark, clobbering the wood with its handle before falling to the ground. Ino muttered a string of curses as she walked to retrieve her weapons, all the while fighting down a blush that threatened to turn her the same shade as Sakura's hair. Sakura. This was all her fault. None of these thoughts needed to exist, and they wouldn't have, at least not until Ino deemed, if Sakura hadn't brought it all up in the first place. Why was it so hard anyway? She had experience with proclaiming her feelings, didn't she? She had done it for Sasuke of all people. It should have been a cakewalk. She knew better, of course. The brutal truth of the matter was that she hadn't actually liked Sasuke. A schoolgirl crush, as her father had so eloquently put it. Ino regretted opening up to her father about such things, but she had no one else to talk to. He was right, much to her frustrations. He even had the gall to ask about Naruto. It was no surprise that he had discerned much from his observations. That didn't mean Ino had to like it. She liked it even less when he advised her to be more open about such feelings with Naruto, even encouraging her newfound fondness for the Jinchuriki, albeit with a suspiciously mischievous look in his eyes. That was the problem. Ino knew she had to talk to Naruto about it. She knew she had to be honest, not just to him, but to herself too. Her feelings were real. She needed to know if they could go anywhere. But how? What would she do if Naruto didn't feel the same? What if he thought she was only doing it out of pity for his being the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki? What if the idiot rejected her for fear of how people might treat her for being with him? There were just too many ways it could all blow up in her face. If admitting her feeling to him was going to destroy the friendship they had right now, then Ino would rather stay silent. But it was killing her to do so. Thankfully, she had time. Time to think, to plan, and to orchestrate the perfect scenario for her to express how she truly felt. All she had to do was keep her distance from Naruto and everything would. Ino, Naruto called out, running towards her. There is no God, Ino thought, forcing herself to smile without letting her internal panic escape. Hey, Naruto, she greeted pleasantly. If she played dumb, maybe he wouldn't question her avoidance. What's up? Naruto was grinning like an idiot by the time he reached her. I'm so glad I found you, he said. I was going to leave a note with your dad, but he told me you would probably be here. Good thing too. I don't have much time. Note to self. Kill my father post haste. A note. Don't have much time. What are you talking about? She asked curiously. His grin only got wider. I've gotta go on a mission with Pervy Sage, he said. We are going to find his old teammate and bring her back to the village. I thought I would come and let you know I was heading out and I don't know how long I will be. Ino smiled warmly. He could have just left a note, but she was glad he didn't. These little send-offs meant a lot to her for some reason. They had a dangerous profession, so maybe she was just worried any time together could be their last. I'll look after your place, don't worry, she said. But who is Pervy Sage? Ino had heard of this so-called Pervy Sage, but never bothered to ask about the man properly. Naruto just told her that the Hokage had organized for him to try and train with the Kyuubi's power and that his teacher was a massive pervert. She thought that was the end of it. Jiraiya, Naruto answered. He said he's a Sannin or something, but he's just a big pervert. Jiraiya, of the Sannin? Ino asked incredulously, earning a nod from Naruto. Author of the Ika Ika books, student of the third Hokage, sensei to the fourth Hokage, and arguably one of the most powerful shinobi to still be serving Konoha. That Jiraiya, huh, I guess he is kinda famous. Still just a pervert though, Naruto said, before narrowing his eyes at the girl. How do you know about his pervy books? And he's the one who has been teaching you how to use the Kyuubi's chakra? She asked, ignoring his last question. And now he's taking you on a mission with him. To find Tsunade of the Sannin. Is your team going too? No, just me and him, Naruto said like it wasn't a big deal. He said he's going to teach me an awesome jutsu that the fourth Hokage used. It's going to be so cool. Ino stood there, mouth agape, eyes unfocused, trying with all her might to understand just how the hell did Naruto not realize what was happening. Any back-shelf thoughts she had about confessing to Naruto in this moment were immediately squashed down. The fool was being groomed to be the next student of Jiraiya of the freaking Sannin and he didn't even realize it. Her feelings could wait. History was literally unfolding before her, and she'd be damned if she got in the way of that. Besides, with Jiraiya looking after him, Ino had no doubt that Naruto would return safe and sound. She could deal with the awkwardness once he was back and use the time until then to figure out what she was going to say. What the hell are you doing here? Ino yelled, catching Naruto off guard. Go. Go. Don't keep a Sannin waiting, you idiot. Naruto laughed as Ino began pushing him towards the gate. Whoa, calm down, Ino, he said, only to receive a stern look and a finger pointed towards the village gate. Okay. I'm going. I just had to come say goodbye. And you've said it, Ino said, giving him another shove. Now go, before I drag you there by your ankles. What? No hug this time. Naruto whined. Ino blushed but kept pushing him. Plenty of time for that when you get back. Now go. I won't tell you again. Naruto waited until she tried to push him again and weaved around her arms, wrapping his own around her in a quick hug, thankfully not paying any mind to the brighter shade the poor girl turned. Gotcha, he said victoriously before letting her go and running off towards the gate, waving to her as he went. Thanks, Ino. You're the best. Ino stood there, silently fuming at the audacity of that cursed boy. Her blush refused to leave even as he vanished from sight. This was exactly why she needed to keep her distance from Naruto until she was ready. How was she supposed to get anything done with him messing with her like that? Ino was sure Naruto had no idea what he was doing, but that just made it worse. She was defenseless against such dumb innocence. With a growl she threw another kunai, this time missing the target altogether as it flew past the dummy and disappeared into the woods behind. God damn it. She knew she should have made Naruto leave her with some shadow clones to obliterate. He owed her that much for leaving her so flustered. Chidori. Rasengan. The two lunged at each other, their respective jutsu in hand. Sasuke's Chidori, chirping and crackling around his hand, overpowered, and fueled by his new cursed form, the corrupting chakra of the curse mark now in full effect. Naruto's Rasengan, swirling in the palm of his now clawed hand, the red chakra of the Kyuubi fully form around him with a single tail trailing behind. The battle had long since transcended that of two genin fighting for a simple outcome. It was now a battle between a boy who would gladly become a monster to get what he desired, and a monster who would rather die than watch someone lose themselves in such a way. It made Naruto sick to his stomach, this power that he was now relying on, this shroud of blood red that enveloped him. As if the fox's mere existence wasn't a curse enough, now it had to literally cover him with the color of the blood that stained its hands. But he had no choice. He needed to be stronger, to use its power for good. He needed to bring Sasuke back to the village. It didn't matter what the cost was. All Naruto cared about was getting the pompous Uchiha home, to safety, to his friends. But even he was starting to realize how lost that cause was. Naruto could barely recognize Sasuke in his current form. There was no telling just how much damage that Curse Seal had done in the time since the Chunin exams, but Naruto was convinced that he wasn't fighting his teammate anymore. This was someone else, something different. This wasn't Sasuke. The Sasuke he knew wouldn't do this. He wouldn't take the easy way out in the pursuit of cheap power. No, this was Orochimaru's doing. Naruto swore that once he had dragged his friend home and gotten that seal off of him, he would hunt down the snake and personally tear his throat out. Damn fox, Naruto thought, gritting his teeth as he fought down the ever-growing rage bubbling up inside him. The fox was trying desperately to infect him with its bloodlust, its desire to kill and destroy anyone in its path. It had taken everything Naruto had to hold back the mental onslaught, all the while trying to fight Sasuke to a standstill without doing too much damage. Granny Tsunade would kill him if he dropped a half-dead Uchiha at her feet. Their jutsu collided, neither one buckling under the weight of the other. The air warped around them and the water beneath them swirled angrily. Naruto knew this was it, the deciding moment. He couldn't maintain the fox form any longer, and once it faded, he wasn't sure he'd be able to stand. At the same time, he could feel Sasuke pouring more and more chakra into his Chidori, the blade of lighting slowly working its way through his Rasengan. That's when he felt it, a sudden burst from within himself. He wasn't sure if he had slipped up. Maybe he was too weak to hold it back any longer. The fox's chakra flooded into him, more powerful and enraged than before, the tail of chakra whipping around and wrapping around Sasuke's arm in a crushing grip. What the heck? Kill him, the fox growled, its voice invading his mind. Use my power. Do not let us die to the likes of an Uchiha. Naruto's eyes widened as he heard Sasuke's arms snap under the tail's grip. To the Uchiha's credit, he didn't let up in the slightest, fighting through the pain in a desperate last attempt to cut through Naruto's defense. Naruto's eyes quickly turned to his Rasengan. It had changed. The Kyuubi's chakra now taking over it, overpowering the Chidori, condensing and grinding more and more, all the while aimed at Sasuke's chest. No. Naruto fought against the chakra, trying to pull his arm back, trying to undo his jutsu. It was too late. The fox had taken hold of it, and with what little time it had left, was trying to kill Sasuke. Panic took over. Naruto knew he was done for if he killed Sasuke. If he let the Kyuubi control him like this, he would have failed everyone who trusted him, who had faith in him to contain the fox. The fourth Hokage, his parents, the old man, Kakashi, pervy sage, and Ino. How would he ever be able to look Ino in the eye again if he killed one of their friends? How could he trust himself to not hurt anyone else? Naruto, in his panic, came up with solution. It was stupid, but if there was one thing he was good at, it was stupid. With everything he had left, he took a deep breath and pulsed his chakra outward, the constant dull burn of the Kyuubi's chakra quickly disappearing and being replaced by a hot and wet feeling in his chest. It was almost strange. He knew what had happened. What he had allowed to happen. But somehow it didn't bother him. It didn't even hurt anymore. Maybe this was what giving up felt like. Was he really giving up? Naruto. Sasuke's voice was barely a whisper. His eyes wide, and even as his Chidori laid firmly planted inside Naruto's chest, he couldn't help the tremor in his hand. What did you do? Naruto chuckled, blood quickly filling his mouth as he coughed. Hey, you should see your face, he said, wincing as he slumped forward. Sasuke's Chidori died out as he pulled his hand back, catching Naruto as he fell forward. He could feel the blood pouring from Naruto's chest, soaking his clothes and staining his hands. He wasn't an idiot. His Sharingan had seen everything. That vile red chakra taking control of Naruto, overpowering him. He had seen the fight for control, the fight Naruto had put up to hold back, to avoid killing him. Even after everything, when the opportunity was right there, Naruto wouldn't kill him. Then it had all stopped. In a single burst of chakra, the red was cast aside, the Rasengan vanished. Naruto had chosen defeat. He had chosen death. What have you done? Sasuke yelled. You idiot, Naruto. Why? He could feel it. Naruto's heartbeat. With each pulse more blood pumped out onto him, the water below darkening. Almost too quickly Naruto's feet slid into the water, his chakra no longer able to support him, leaving Sasuke to bear both their weight. His curse mark receded, his body returning to normal, but his Sharingan remained. Every moment of their fight was now burnt into his mind, replaying in his mind, over and over, just like the night of the massacre, just like before. Only this time was worse. It was real. Itachi may have forced him to see his parents die, but he had never felt it. He hadn't held them, hadn't felt their breath fade, their heart weaken. What had he done? I couldn't, Naruto said weakly. I don't want to be a monster. I wanted to help you. I don't need your help, Sasuke said, pulling Naruto to the edge of the water and laying him down. He tried to put pressure on the gaping hole in Naruto's chest, but it didn't seem to do anything other than cover his hands in more blood. Someone will be here. Just hold on. Naruto reached out to grab Sasuke's arm. Don't go, he said. I made a promise. I have to bring you back. Shut up, Sasuke growled. Why couldn't you just let me go? I didn't want this to happen. None of this had to happen. This is all your fault. Despite his harsh words, there was no hiding the tears in his eyes. Sasuke may have been cold, and he was committed to leaving Konoha, but he never wanted anyone to get hurt. Not like this. Naruto was infuriating at the best of times, but he didn't deserve to die. Only Itachi deserved that. Why? Damn it. Bringing me back isn't worth your life. It is, to me, Naruto said, a smile still on his face even as the color slowly left it. The village needs you. We need you. I won't give up on you, Sasuke. You don't need to be alone. We can still be friends. How are we supposed to be friends if you die? Naruto coughed, blood trickling from his lips. Hey, I didn't think this through, huh? He said with a pained chuckle. Sasuke glared at him. Stop joking around, he said. Save your strength. Someone will be here soon. Just stay alive, idiot. I knew you cared, Naruto said, a shit-eating grin plastered on his face. Stop talking. Do you think I'll see them? What? Sasuke asked. Naruto's heartbeat was so weak now. So much blood had poured out. How was he still awake? My parents, Naruto said, tears forming in his eyes as he looked up to the sky hopefully. I don't know who they were. I want to see them. If I could. Do you think they are waiting? Sasuke winced as he kept pressure, his broken arm screaming at him to let go. You're not seeing anyone but a doctor. Naruto smiled. It was hard to breathe now. At least the fox wasn't yelling in his mind anymore. He supposed it was too much to expect the Kyuubi's chakra to help him heal from anything. He took the time to think about his life, of those in it who he held dear. Maybe he shouldn't have been so annoying all these years. If this was really where things were going to end, then he regretted that more people didn't have better memories of him. Granny Tsunade was going to lose her mind. He hoped she didn't kill anyone, or worse, knock down Konoha in her grief. That would be bad. Everyone else would be okay, he figured. He was sure Ino would be mad at him for dying like, oh right. Ino. Naruto wished she was here now. Not to see him like this, but just so he could see her once more. Of all his mistakes and regrets, not telling Ino how he felt about her would be top of his list. It had been something that had taken him too long to realize. Maybe dying was putting things into perspective for him. Perspective. Another word he would never have used had she not spent so many late nights helping him with his book smarts. She would never know how much those headache-inducing nights meant to him. How her belief in him drove him to improve in ways he never thought he could. Ino had become his best friend. Naruto's decision to trust her with his secret that one night had changed his life. He only wished he could tell her that. Tell her how much she meant. How much he liked her, and not just as a friend. He didn't know what it felt like to have family, or someone to love. But he knew it must have felt like he did whenever Ino was with him. Wherever she was, whenever they were together, it always felt like that was exactly where he was meant to be. He would give anything to feel that feeling once more. To hold her hand. To see her smile. "You are a fool, boy," the Kyuubi grumbled, his words falling on a mind already too far gone to hear them. "Hey, Sasuke," Naruto said, the smile on his face slowly falling as the color of his eyes began to dull. "I said shut up. Tell Ino, I'm sorry." Sasuke froze as Naruto went limp. His hands moved ever so slightly with each feeble beating of his heart, until, with one final breath, it stopped. Everything stopped. The world around them was silent, and the image of Naruto's lifeless body was already burnt into his mind, into his cursed eyes. Why wouldn't his damn Sharingan deactivate? He waited for what felt like forever. Time didn't seem to move properly anymore. He knew he couldn't stay. There was too much blood on his hands now. Literally and figuratively. There was no way he could return to Konoha now. Not after this. For what it was worth, the curse mark no longer burned. The slimy words of the snake Sanin were for once quiet. Sasuke wasn't sure if that was a good thing. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. Was his mission really worth all of this? Did Itachi's death require more people to die? Had he gone too far? He steeled his nerves. None of that mattered now. What was done was done. No matter how much he might have regretted it, there was no going back. "Forgive me, Naruto," he said softly, leaving the boy to be found by the inevitable search party. He had to keep going. Even if he knew it was stomping on Naruto's sacrifice to not return to the village, he had to leave. He needed to get stronger. He had to kill Itachi. He couldn't let all of this be for nothing. Naruto's death had to be for something more than just bringing him back. It had to mean more than that. It needed to. He needed it too. As he made his way towards Otogakure, Sasuke mistook the pain in his eyes to be from both the tears he couldn't hold back, and the overuse of his dojutsu. He failed to notice how the world now looked to him as his Sharingan began to twist and reshape. The hospital was chaos. By the time Ino had arrived, some of the members of the retrieval team were starting to be brought back. She had almost had a heart attack when she saw how skinny and frail Choji was when he was brought in. She knew his family's secret recipe pills were dangerous, but she never imagined it would leave him in such a state. Tsunade assured her that her teammate would survive, but that did little to ease Ino's nerves as more of her friends were brought in. Neji was in better condition, exhausted and cut up, with a couple of deep puncture wounds, but at least he was well enough to show more concern for everyone else than his own condition. Shikamaru was brought back by Tamari of the Sand, a fact Ino took particular notice of with the way her teammates' eyes lingered on the Sunakunoichi. She would take delight in grilling him for information about that when things weren't so dire. Everyone else came back in a group, accompanied by the other two of the Sand siblings, and Rock Lee, who was still supposed to be recovering. Kiba was in the worst way of them all, but he seemed too arrogant to acknowledge it. His bravado would be the death of him. That only left Naruto. Ino paced impatiently back and forth at the entrance to the hospital, waiting for that knuckle-headed blonde to waltz in, dragging Sasuke kicking and screaming behind him, that same stupid grin on his face that he always had when he got what he wanted. She wasn't even sure how long she had been pacing, but if the idiot didn't show up soon, there was going to be holes in the floor. What was he thinking? Making her worry like this? taking his sweet time to get back. Oh, he would come to learn the error of his way, that much she could promise. Never again would he keep a lady waiting. When she finally heard the door barge open, she was all too quick to spin around, reprimanding Reddy. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting for? Ino's words died in her throat, her eyes went wide, and her pale complexion suddenly went ghostly white. You. There was blood. So much blood. It was everywhere. Soaking Kakashi's clothes, dripping through his fingers onto the floor. The masked man was breathing heavily, no doubt having just broken a speed record getting back to the village. Ino could see the panic in his one visible eye, the pain. In his arms, hanging limp and broken, was Naruto. He wasn't conscious. He didn't even look alive. You wouldn't even have known his clothes had been orange with how much blood now covered him. Even his hair, his brilliant bright hair, hung heavy and red against his paled face. Tsunade! Kakashi yelled, marching straight past Ino as he raced Naruto to the nearest bed. What now? Tsunade grumbled as she rounded the corner before she adopted a look not too dissimilar to Ino. Naruto! She yelled in shock, rushing to the boy with her hands already glowing green. What the hell happened? Kakashi stepped back and looked down in shame. I found him like this, he said. And Sasuke? Tsunade asked. The man shook his head. Gone. Tsunade growled as she pushed her hands into the hole that was once Naruto's chest. She had already used so much chakra keeping the others alive, what she had left was being pushed to its limits trying to perform a miracle. What the hell did this to him? She demanded. The Chidori, Kakashi said shamefully. Sasuke must have. Fuck. I can't feel a pulse, Tsunade exclaimed. Call anyone who is free. I need everyone now. Pulling her hands back for a second, she blitzed through some hand seals and bit her blood-covered thumb. Her fear of blood could wait until Naruto wasn't dead. In a puff of smoke, a large white slug appeared on her shoulder. Katsuya. Chakra. Now, she ordered, plunging her hand back into Naruto's chest and began hand-pumping his heart. There was still time. There had to be. With her spare hand she ripped the boy's shirt off and wiped the glowing appendage over his stomach, letting out a sigh of relief as the seal appeared on his skin. Ino stood there, dead to the world, her eyes fixating on Naruto. He looked so peaceful, so soft, so innocent. How could this have happened? Why him? After everything. Tears filled her eyes as she watched Tsunade wheel the bed into an operating room, followed quickly by everyone else who could spare their efforts. She followed, slowly like a ghost, silently keeping her distance as she watched the chaos unfold. No one even noticed her in the room. They were all too focused on Naruto. It almost made Ino happy to see so many people so focused on his well-being. Something's wrong, Tsunade said, placing a hand on the seal. Why isn't the Kyuubi healing him? God damn it, I can't heal him if that stupid thing's chakra is going to fight me every step of the way. Someone, find Jiraiya. Shizune, help me. Shizune rushed to her sensei's side and got to work, only to stop suddenly. Tsunade. Her voice was barely a whisper as her own tears began to form. It only took her a few seconds to realize how serious this was. It was a miracle Naruto's body was holding on at all. But she knew a lost cause when she felt one. Such a wound would be near impossible to repair normally, but now, with the Kyuubi's chakra lingering in Naruto's body, it was simply unimaginable. Don't you dare, Tsunade barked. I will not lose him. Not like this. We can still save him. She reached towards the seal. She knew little about seals outside of her own, let alone one made by the fourth Hokage, but she knew enough about disrupting them. If she could just mess with it enough to flood Naruto with the Biju's chakra, then maybe that would be enough to kickstart his heart. He was still there, just waiting to be pulled back. He wasn't gone yet. Tsunade. Shizune yelled, grabbing the woman's arm. Tsunade glared at her apprentice. Let me go, Shizune, she said. I don't care if that fox raises this village to the ground. I'm not losing Naruto. As the two medics had their little standoff, Ino watched on in horror. Her mind halted and time itself seemed to stretch on forever as she took in the sight before her. There was no way this could be real. Naruto was the strongest of them all. He had proved that. How could Sasuke have done this to him? A part of her was glad that Tsunade's lack of care with words right now wasn't going to lead to any more drama. She already knew of the Kyuubi, and no one else was in the room yet. But that also raised questions. From what Ino understood, the fox's chakra was meant to heal Naruto, not fight against him. What was even happening? Did the Kyuubi truly want Naruto dead that bad? Ino didn't know what to think. She didn't know what to do. But she did know one thing. If this was her last chance to talk to Naruto, then she would be damned if she didn't get to hear his voice once more. And so, in possibly the stupidest move ever made by someone of her clan, she formed a hand seal, and pointed it straight at Naruto's body. Mind transfer jutsu. Neither Tsunade or Shizune processed those words quick enough, both so transfixed on their current dilemma, to notice what was happening before it was too late. Tsunade looked at the now unconscious body of Ino laying on the floor before turning her attention to Naruto on the table. Realizing what had just happened, she jerked her hand out of Shizune's grip and doubled her efforts to keep the boy's blood pumping. "Get Inoichi here," she yelled. Naruto's life was now no longer the only one in the balance. It was darker than the last time she had been inside Naruto's mind. Admittedly, that had been some time ago now, but the memory of that night had faded very little. Immediately after arriving, Ino found herself fighting with everything she had to not get thrown away. Her body screamed as the pain in Naruto's body was mirrored into her own. This was the danger of her family's jutsu. Ino knew that if she stayed here for too long, her soul would tangle too much with Naruto's, and they would be bound in their fate together. With that in mind, she took off down the flooded corridor, making her way through the small maze as if this place was her own mind. One would think she knew his mind like the back of her hand, but in truth she was just following a sensation. As if something was guiding her through. "Naruto," she cried out, entering the main chamber. What she found only made her stomach sink. Naruto was there, slumped up against the bars of the Kyuubi's cage, the same injuries from his physical body now present on his own consciousness. That was never a good sign. Ino ran up to him, ignoring the bright red eyes that peered down at her from the shadows. "Naruto, I'm here," she said, falling to her knees and pulling him to her. "Come on, idiot. Wake up. You're going to make it through this." She shook him gently, but he didn't stir. "Please, Naruto. Get up. You are too late," the Kyuubi said in a bored tone. Ino glared at the beast. "Shut up." The fox chuckled. "Your scent is familiar," it said curiously. "How foolish to return here again at such a time as this." "I said shut up," Ino screamed. "This is all your fault. Why aren't you healing him? Why didn't you help him beat Sasuke?" The Kyuubi slammed its hand against the cage, surprisingly earning little more than a flinch from the girl. "The runt chose this," the beast yelled. "He would rather let us die than use my power to kill that worthless Uchiha. And now that he has cast aside my strength so arrogantly, die is what he will do. Unless..." Ino narrowed her eyes. "Unless what?" The Kyuubi's eyes flickered with a cunningness that wasn't lost on Ino. "Unless you weaken the seal. And let you free," Ino said skeptically. "Do you honestly think I am that stupid? I am bound to his soul, as you too soon will be," the fox said knowingly. "When he dies, so shall I. You would be wise to leave before you share in our fate." Ino would have liked to say she thought about things a bit more in depth than she actually did. Shikamaru would give her such a lecture on reading the fine print before agreeing to a deal, but there just wasn't time. "What do I have to do?" she asked desperately. The Kyuubi's eyes turned to the piece of paper stuck to the outside of the bars, the word, seal, printed plainly to see. "Tear the seal," it said. Ino looked at the paper unsurely for a moment before turning back to Naruto's lifeless form. "It'll be okay," she whispered, gently laying him down. She tried to walk to the middle of the cage, only to stumble and fall to her hands and knees, the air seemingly knocked from her lungs. With a glance, she saw the blood now slowly leaking from her chest. Oh no! The wounds were transferring so much faster than she expected. She was running out of time. With a pained grunt, she got back to her feet. She wasn't sure if this would work. Taking the word of a monster was definitely high up on her list of dumb ideas. But she didn't have a choice. If there was even a small chance, she had to take it, and she had to hurry. Each step felt heavier, and every breath weaker. The taste of blood filled her mouth and her vision blurred. Ino knew she was now beyond the point of no return. Her physical body would have started succumbing to the injuries as well. Somehow, this didn't bother her as much as she thought it would. Dying was always a possibility as a shinobi. It was something she had come to terms with a long time ago. But this, right here, right now, didn't feel like dying, at least not in the way one would assume. No, this was repayment. Naruto had already sacrificed so much for the village, for the people. He had lost more than anyone she knew. He didn't deserve to lose his life as well. Not like this. Not yet. It was time that someone made a sacrifice for him instead. Ino only regretted not being able to tell him how she felt about him before she did this. And I was supposed to be the smart one out of us, she thought amusedly. She had barely noticed the water rising beneath her feet until she was standing right before the seal itself. Her hand trembled as she reached for it, her fingers weakly grasping the paper. It was a weird feeling, to hold such a thing in her hand, knowing what power it held at bay. Such a simple feeble thing. Ino gripped the paper with both hands, took a deep breath, and... Wait, the Kyuubi said suddenly, stopping the girl in her tracks. Its eyes watched her carefully as it quickly considered its thoughts. The fox wanted out, there was no denying that. But this girl, this child, was willing to die on the mere hope of saving its Jinchuriki. Hell, she would likely already die from trying in the first place. Was his freedom worth such a cost? The lives of children, the innocent. So much blood already stained his claws. He had been used as a weapon of destruction and death against his will too much already. Was he prepared to truly let himself become the monster the world now saw him as? What would his father think of him if he knew such hatred had poisoned him so? He raised himself to Ino's level. This, saving him, saving us, it could kill you. You understand, don't you? He asked, Ino giving a stern look of resolve to answer. Only a small piece, he said. Ino, wasting none of the near non-existent time she had left, grabbed the corner of the paper, and pulled. The paper tearing far easier than she expected. She didn't have to wait to see the results. As soon as the torn piece of the seal fell from her hands into the water, the room lit up, red chakra gushing in through the bars and flooding down the corridors. She expected it to burn, to drown her out and cast her from this plane, but it didn't. It felt warm. The water in the room began to rise, lifting Naruto's body to the same level. Stumbling over to him, Ino collapsed beside him, watching in relief as the Kyuubi's chakra enveloped him, the wounds already starting to heal and fade. Thank you. Ino jumped at the words, her head shooting up only to see a man, smiling at her. He looked just like Naruto, only older, and eerily familiar. For the life of her, Ino could swear she knew who she was looking at. It was on the tip of her tongue, and yet, Lord Fourth. The fourth Hokage continued to smile, gently placing his hand on the girl's shoulder, chakra flowing into her and numbing her pain, the wounds that had begun forming on her stopping suddenly. Please, look after my son, he said. He cares deeply for you. Ino's eyes widened. Your son. Farewell. No, wait. Her words disappeared as she was suddenly enveloped in red chakra, her spirit forcefully ejected from Naruto's body. Minato's eyes lingered on Naruto for a short while, taking his time to cherish this moment with his son. It was so much earlier than he had planned. Naruto was so young still. Oh, Kushina, I wish you could see our boy, he said softly, stroking Naruto's hair. I'm so sorry, Naruto. I had hoped to take this chance to talk to you, just once. I love you, so much. He stood, cradling Naruto in his arms, turning his attention to the cage from which a tidal wave of chakra was now freely flowing from. Behind the bars, two large red eyes stared at him, a deep and shameful sorrow held in them. We need to talk. Outside, in the real world, mere minutes had passed. Ino's body was now laid in a bed beside Naruto. Several doctors and medic nin now filled the room, frantically working alongside Tsunade to try and stabilize Naruto while also desperately trying to halt the injuries now forming on the young Yamanaka. Tsunade had no idea what Ino was thinking, but if the girl survived, she was going to find out, painfully. Despite everyone's best efforts, none of them were actual miracle workers. Naruto's condition wasn't improving in the slightest, and Ino was quickly following the same path. Who even makes a jutsu with that disastrous of a flaw, honestly? The best they could do was keep the two of them alive and hope for, well, Tsunade wasn't sure what to hope for. It was a struggle to maintain her medical jutsu for so long, let alone think straight. That was when it happened. If the level of chaos was sitting at a maxed out 10, then it officially broke the limit by several more scales. Tsunade sensed the chakra before she felt it, the red boiling ooze pouring out of Naruto with next to no warning, burning her hands before she could pull them back. Everyone out, she yelled in a panic as the Kyuubi's chakra fully enshrouded Naruto's body, the wound on his chest bubbling and sizzling as it was forcefully closed. Had her worst fears been realized? She tried to rush to Ino, intending to get the girl out of the room to what little safety there might have been, only to be stopped by a giant clawed hand of chakra slamming into the ground in front of her. Those who hadn't heeded her warning to get out quickly fled the room at the sight of the glowing red appendage. Tsunade looked at Naruto, and felt her heart nearly stop in her chest. No. Sitting upright, coated head to toe in red chakra that took the form of a fox, was Naruto. Only it was not Naruto. Tsunade could see that much. His once bright blue eyes were now a dark red, pupils slitted, and they stared at her with such disgust, such a disregard for her existence that it couldn't possibly be human. She backed away slowly, preparing herself for what was to come. Only it didn't. The Kyuubi didn't attack. It just sat there, staring at her. Even as it withdrew the hand, its eyes didn't leave her. Then, using Naruto's body as a puppet for its own sick joke, the beast pointed to Ino's body. Heal her, it demanded, a tail of chakra moving behind her and shoving her towards Ino's bed. Tsunade shakily raised her hands to the girl's chest, noticing that her injuries had stopped forming any further. Was the jutsu interrupted? It must have been. Why on earth would the Kyuubi want her to heal Ino? It didn't matter. She tried, with what chakra she had left, to close the wounds, but it was hopeless. She had already nearly exhausted herself healing the others beforehand, and combined with her now burned hands, still throbbing with the Kyuubi's foul chakra, there was no way she could mold the necessary medical jutsu to be of any use. Even with Katsuya's chakra it would take too long to both heal herself and Ino. Guess I'll have to use it, she thought to herself, carefully directing her chakra around the gem on her forehead, but before she could do anything she stopped, the pain in her hands replaced with a warm sensation as Katsuya was dispelled from her shoulder. Tsunade felt her chakra surge, and she felt stronger than she ever had before. Tsunade watched in shock and confusion as Naruto's clawed hand rested atop her own, the Kyuubi's chakra shroud now flowing harmlessly over and into her and Ino. Use it, the fox growled. Heal her, while I permit it. Why are you doing this? Tsunade asked. The Kyuubi grinned. It was an unnerving and twisted expression to see on the sweet boy's face. You're wasting time. It was easier than she expected, molding the unnatural chakra how she needed to. Tsunade could feel the Kyuubi's chakra cooperating with her, learning as she went and taking over where it needed. It was remarkable. On the one hand, Tsunade could only begin to imagine the potential such chakra could provide to the medical field, how someone like herself could use it, and to think the Biju were traded around to be used as nothing more than weapons. Her disappointment in the existence of Jinchuriki only grew with this discovery. On the other hand, however, were now far too many questions with no time to ask them. The Kyuubi helping someone, or just the beast showing any sign of humanity, was unbelievable. Tsunade knew that once this was over, if she was still alive, she would be looking into it extensively. With the newfound chakra at her disposal, it didn't take long for Tsunade to heal Ino back to perfect health. Her hands had healed as she worked, and even her chakra reserves had rapidly returned. She knew the regenerative powers of a Jinchuriki were legendary, but to feel it herself was a humbling experience. The effortlessness of it all, the seemingly endless supply of power, it was all so much to take in at once. But it wasn't to last. As suddenly as the power had been extended to her, was it pulled away. With her part to play finished, it made sense. The Kyuubi swatted the woman's hands away as soon as its power had withdrawn from her, a tail quickly pushing her back to a distance. Placing a hand on the seal on Naruto's stomach, it pulled a small orb of blue chakra from the boy's body, holding it almost carefully as he brought it down to Ino and watched as it slowly faded into her chest. As soon as the orb fully disappeared, Ino's eyes shot open. Naruto, she yelled, quickly finding herself looking at the boy in question. A combination of fear and discomfort filled her as the red eyes of the Kyuubi looked back at her, a grin of teeth too sharp sending a chill down her spine. Kyuubi, you owe me, the fox said ominously, its chakra quickly drawing back into Naruto's body and its voice fading. Eventually only the red eyes were left to show its control until those two faded back to their original blue. Naruto blinked as he came to, looking back and forth between Ino and Tsunade like a lost puppy. Ino. Granny. What the hell is Goi? His world went black as he passed out, falling forward into Ino's arms. Tsunade. Hell, what the hell? Ino winced as she received a firm slap to the side of the head. What was that for? Tsunade glared at the girl with tears in her eyes. I should kill you for the stunt you just pulled, she yelled before quickly wrapping her arms around both blondes in a bone-crushing hug. Thank you. I don't know what you did. But thank you. Ino gasped for air. Tsunade. Can't breathe, let go. Tsunade released her grip, taking a few deep breaths of her own as her nerves finally calmed. She had earned herself a strong drink after today, and anyone who argued otherwise was a walking corpse. Don't think for a second you're off the hook for this, Ino, she said sternly. You could have died, or worse. I know, Ino said, hanging her head in shame. She couldn't imagine what the punishment this time would be, but she knew that the lecture she was going to get from her father would go down in Konoha's history. I'm sorry, but I had to. I couldn't let him go. Not yet. Tsunade sighed deeply. What happened in there? Ino hugged Naruto to her tightly and shook her head. I don't know. Not really. I'm sorry. We can discuss this later, Tsunade said. For now, get some rest. The two of you are to be confined to this room until I figure out what just happened. Am I understood? Ino nodded. Good. Oh, and Ino, don't ever do that again. Ino was worried. Actually, that wasn't quite right. She was terrified. It had been almost 3 whole days since the incident at the hospital, and nothing had happened. Most people would have considered that a blessing, but not Ino. She knew something terrible was brewing, and it would come crashing down on her head at any moment. She had thankfully been given permission to leave the hospital rather quickly. Tsunade had given her a full and very extensive medical, while her father conducted the most intense mind assessment she had ever felt. The fact that neither of them took the time to yell at her or chastise her for her actions so far was only the start of why she was as worried as she was right now. The real cause for her concern was also the same reason she had spent the last few days in the hospital room she had been discharged from. Naruto was still unconscious. He was alive, that much was obvious. Ino was over the moon about that. But he hadn't so much as stirred in his sleep this whole time. It left her wondering if she had messed up. Had she accidentally broken his mind? Did her actions release the Kyuubi into Naruto's body and the fox was now just biding its time to attack? No, that would be ridiculous. For obvious reasons, Ino was now forbidden from using her clan's jutsu for the foreseeable future, and even if she wasn't, there was no telling what another delve into Naruto's mind might do. Her father had attempted to check in on Naruto's mind, but he was forcefully removed every time. The Kyuubi had Naruto's mind locked down tight. No one had any idea if that was a bad thing or not. Jiraiya had thoroughly investigated the seal, finding that, although damaged and weaker than before, it still contained the Kyuubi in the way it was supposed to. Tsunade had been suspiciously tight-lipped about her findings from the medical examinations. Outside of giving Ino a clean bill of health and discharging her, nothing else was said. It had made things interesting to say the least. Ino didn't have any answers to give when her teammates and the rest of the rookies had come to check in on her and Naruto. She couldn't just tell them what had happened. Not that she thought they would believe her anyway. The truth seemed almost too ridiculous to be real. But she also lacked a convincing lie to tell everyone. Everyone knew she hadn't gone on the retrieval mission. As far as anyone else was concerned, Ino was just hell-bent on being by Naruto's side during his recovery. While not exactly wrong, it did make Ino worry about the ideas people were getting in their head about the two of them. She hadn't even had the chance to tell the idiot she liked him. She didn't need people thinking they were an item before she could confess. Ino took a breath to calm herself down. She knew worrying was pointless, she just couldn't help it. Glancing at the clock on the wall, she groaned. It was almost time for her to head home. She hated leaving Naruto here, alone. What if he woke up to an empty room? The thought had crossed her mind to simply kidnap him. Tsunade would murder her for that. Speak of the devil, Ino thought, the woman in question casually walking in and locking the door behind her. Lady Tsunade, Ino greeted, bowing. Don't worry, I was just about to leave. Stay, Tsunade said, grabbing a nearby chair and sitting herself across from the girl. We need to talk. Ino gulped and sat up straight. She had been expecting this moment. Tsunade had been far too busy lately, what with Rock Lee's surgery and the recovery of the retrieval team. She thought she would have more time. Of course. I read your report, Tsunade said. You aren't a very good liar. At least on paper. Oh, don't worry. I don't blame you for trying, she said. But I do need to know what happened. You did something to the seal, didn't you? Ino nodded, averting her eyes in shame. I removed a piece of it, she said. It was the only way to get enough of the Kyuubi's chakra through to heal him. And how did you know that would work? The Kyuubi, it told me. Ino knew the moment those words left her mouth just how stupid it sounded. How could anyone trust the beast that attacked their village? She didn't fully understand what came over her to trust the fox in the first place. Maybe it had been the panic, or the near-death circumstances. Either way, Ino knew that in that moment she felt she could trust the Kyuubi. It didn't make sense, but it didn't need to. It had worked out after all, she hoped. Tsunade rested her chin on her interlocked hands, furrowing her brow in thought. So, the fox was trying to help, she mused. Any idea why? It said if Naruto died, it would die too. Self-preservation then. That makes much more sense than a benevolent Biju. Tsunade felt a sense of relief as another puzzle piece fell into place. She didn't need to add feeling guilty for having a kind creature imprisoned to the list of her concerns. That still doesn't explain why it helped save you. Any thoughts? Ino shook her head. No. But, she paused, thinking carefully on whether to say what she wanted to say. Tsunade smiled reassuringly. It's okay, she said. You've been through a lot. You don't have to tell me anything. I'm honestly just glad the two of you are safe. But I want you to know that you can trust me with anything. If there's something I should know about, please tell me. The fourth Hokage, Ino said, looking at Naruto. Naruto's father is the fourth Hokage. How do you know that? Tsunade asked carefully. Such knowledge was beyond confidential. She could name those that knew the truth with her fingers, and Naruto wasn't one of them. Unless Ino had been diving into some very specific mines, with a level of skill she ought not have, then there was no way she could have known. Maybe she figured it out on her own. The resemblance was there, so it wasn't out of the question. I saw him, in the seal, Ino said. He seemed kind. Tsunade smirked. Minato, you insufferable fool, it was just like him to put fail-safes into an already overkill seal. Ino, I want you to listen to me very carefully. What you saw, what you know, is all to remain a secret. Only you and I can know. Okay. Ino's eyes widened. But Naruto, we'll find out when the time is right, Tsunade interrupted. This is no insignificant bit of knowledge. I know you were entrusted with the secret of Naruto's Jinchuriki status, but this is much more than that. I am willing to trust you, as I know Naruto does, but make no mistake, if you jeopardize his safety. I won't, Ino said quickly. I won't. I promise. Doesn't he deserve to know? Hasn't he dealt with enough? He has, Tsunade said sadly. But some things have to wait, even if they hurt. Now, while I have you, I think we should talk about how you were affected by all of this. Do you feel anything strange? Ino tilted her head curiously. I don't know. Should I? She hadn't felt any different than usual, but she also wasn't exactly paying attention to her body since waking up. If anything, she felt better. You were healed by the Kyuubi's chakra. Some of that chakra has remained in your system, Tsunade said. It appears dormant. In all likeliness it will work its way out naturally, but it is something we should keep an eye on just in case. If you notice anything out of the ordinary, or have any concerns, do not hesitate to come to me. We have no idea how such chakra will act within someone who doesn't also contain the beast it belongs to. For now, there is only one notable side effect you will have to deal with. Oh, your chakra pathways have expanded to compensate for the Kyuubi's residual chakra, Tsunade explained. Now, while the chakra may dissipate, your pathways will likely not return to their natural state. Right now, I would say that you have more than triple the amount of chakra you had before. Hell yeah, Ino exclaimed. Take that billboard brow. That also means you will have to learn how to control that new amount of chakra. Ha, piece of cake. I have great chakra control, Ino said. You did, Tsunade corrected. Huh, Tsunade smirked. You'll figure it out, she said, getting up to leave. Don't waste too much time in here. Naruto isn't going anywhere. Once he wakes up, I'm sure you'll be one of the first to know. Ino watched her go for the door, only to call out at the last moment. Lady Tsunade, am I in trouble? For damaging the seal, I mean. Oh, yes, absolutely, Tsunade said. As soon as I figure out how to punish you, that is. It was a tricky situation. If she overdid the punishment, it might draw attention. No one needed to know what happened, so it would be best to play it quiet and safe. But how to go about it? Oh, I couldn't, Tsunade thought, a wicked smile tugging at her lips. Oh, but I can. Ino, do you know Anko Midirashi? Tsunade asked. Had someone not known otherwise, they would have thought Tsunade was the snake of the Sannin with how she was now looking at Ino. The poor girl may as well have been a helpless little rabbit ready for slaughter. Midirashi, you mean that creepy snake lady from the Chunin exams? Ino asked, already feeling uneasy. Tsunade smiled. Oh good, you've already been introduced, she said innocently. It appears that Anko has put in a request for some assistance in some menial tasks. Nothing dangerous, mostly D-rank nonsense. No one has been willing to take it up yet and Anko has been nagging me. I would consider it a very big step in the right direction if you were to volunteer, so to speak. Ino pursed her lips. It was clear by Tsunade's tone that there was no room to argue. A mission, so, does that mean I get to keep being a kunoichi? She asked hopefully. For now, yes, Tsunade said. We can't afford to be turning down capable hands at the moment. You will start by helping Anko. After that, you will continue to be on a probationary period. You have a bad habit of doing very stupid things. We will have to try and correct that. That's fair, Ino said. Truth be told, it was a million times better than what she had been expecting. At least this way she wouldn't spend the rest of her life working at the flower shop. Report to me tomorrow morning. We will work out the details then, Tsunade said, closing the door behind her as she left. Ino sighed deeply and turned an amused smile to Naruto. Well, good to know I didn't just ruin my career trying to save you, she said cheekily. Now you just have to wake up. Her smile turned as she gently held his hand. Please wake up, she whispered, leaning down to give a quick kiss to his forehead. I'll be back tomorrow, okay. With a blush that could put Hinata to shame, Ino quickly grabbed her things and headed home. She wasn't sure what was in store for her tomorrow, but something told her she would need to be well rested for it. Anko couldn't be that bad, right? Naruto knew where he was the moment his consciousness began to drip back into his body. He would never forget the feeling of the hospital beds, or the cheap sheets they used for them. The smell was different this time, pleasant even, like flowers. He was surprised to find his body didn't hurt this time. Not so much as an ache or pain that normally accompanied his recoveries. Am I dead? He didn't put that out of the realm of possibility. The last thing Naruto remembered was his fight with Sasuke and the smell of burning flesh. His flesh. Damn, he was stupid. Letting Sasuke get away like that. How could he face Sakura? What was he supposed to tell her? What would Kakashi think of him? Maybe being dead wouldn't be so bad. Living with the shame of failure seemed unpleasant at best. Of course, if this was what death felt like, Naruto had to admit it wasn't too bad. No pain, peace and quiet, a suspicious warm sensation on his arm and, wait, what? Naruto opened his eyes, taking the time to adjust to the dull light of the room. The sun was just starting to disappear over the horizon, which meant it was the perfect time to break out and get home. There was just one problem. Ino. She was there, asleep, in his hospital room. Her fingers interlocked with his and her face resting on his forearm. She looked so peaceful, so pretty, propped up on the side of his bed. Naruto didn't notice he was staring so intensely until he had to fight back a blush. What was she even doing here at this time? Taking a closer look, he noticed her clothes were ragged, and she was covered in dirt. Even her hair was a mess. Naruto had never known Ino to let her appearance falter so much, even when they trained. Something must have been up. Ino, he said softly, gently moving his arm beneath her. 5 more minutes, Dad, Ino mumbled, wrapping her arms tighter around Naruto's arm and nuzzling her face into his hand. Naruto held back a laugh. He would make sure Ino never lived this down for as long as he lived. If only he had a camera. Ino, wake up. He gave his arm a slightly firmer shake this time, earning a groan from the girl. What? Ino asked tiredly, lifting her head and slowly blinking. She yawned and stretched, finally letting go of Naruto's hand as she rubbed her eyes awake. Sleep well? Naruto asked. Oh, hey Naruto, Ino said, slumping back into her chair. Man, Anko is a slave driver. That woman needs a boyfriend or something. Naruto was having a great time. Ino had no idea what was going on. He would have to remember to take advantage of her sleepiness in the future. The snake lady. Faye. More like snake bitch, Ino scoffed. Did you know she has a jutsu that? She stopped, eyes widening as her head turned slowly to a now grinning Naruto. Naruto. Yeah, Naruto said sheepishly, scratching the back of his head like he always did. Naruto. You okay, Ino? Naruto yelped in surprise as the air was suddenly knocked out of him, Ino crashing into him and wrapping her arms around him in the tightest hug he had ever felt. Since when had Ino been this strong? Gah, Ino, what the hell? You're back, Ino said happily, as if that explained everything. Did I go somewhere? Shut up and hug me. Naruto didn't hesitate, quickly wrapping his arms around her. He knew from prior experience that she wouldn't stop until he returned the gesture. This time felt different though. The way Ino relaxed into his arms was something new, as if all her worries were melting away. It was nice. He liked the idea of being able to provide that kind of comfort for a friend. How long was I out? He asked as Ino pulled away slowly. Almost a week. A week. Oi, you don't get to be freaked out. That's my job. Do you have any idea how worried I've been? I've been coming here morning and night to check on you. You could have at least woken up a little earlier and saved me the worry, Ino said. Yeah, right. Because I totally have control of that, don't I? Naruto said. Not my fault you wasted time checking on me. You are not a waste of time. Ino blushed furiously as the words left her mouth a fair bit louder than she intended, but she didn't back down. No matter how embarrassing it was to say, she wouldn't take it back. Naruto wasn't a waste of time. Not to her. Naruto grinned. Careful, Ino, he teased. Someone might hear you caring about me. He laughed as Ino's blush only got worse. And what if they do? Ino said with a huff. Am I not allowed to show that I care? It really didn't matter anymore. If anyone hadn't figured it out before, they certainly would have by now. It wasn't like the whole village wasn't astutely aware of her intense visiting schedule. Huh. Naruto stopped laughing. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Ino. I didn't. It means a lot. You being here and, thank you. Ino smiled. She found it cute when he was lost for words. In a way it showed how much he cared. He may not find all the words he needed, but he took the time to make sure he didn't just blurt out the wrong words. It was a lot from him when considering how little he cared about saying the wrong thing any other time. Reaching out, she gave a light-hearted knock on his head. It's okay, she said. Just don't do it again. Naruto's expression fell as his hand rubbed his chest warily. It was bad, wasn't it? Don't worry about that, Ino said. All that matters is that you're okay now. We can worry about everything else later. But Sasuke is gone, Ino said sharply. But, no, she continued. We aren't talking about him. Naruto opened his mouth to argue but snapped it shut when Ino glared at him. She could be scary sometimes. Is everyone okay? Mostly. You're the last one left in hospital. I think Choji was the worst off aside from you, Ino said. Oh, well at least everyone is alright, Naruto said, giving Ino a cheeky grin and patting his stomach. I guess this stupid fox is good for something after all. Ino forced a smile. She wanted to tell him everything. To hell with the Hokage's orders. She wanted Naruto to know everything, for there to be no secrets between them. He trusted her. How could she keep things from him? It didn't feel right. Yeah, I guess so, she said. Now wasn't the time to unload all of that onto him. She would tell him, in time. For now, she just wanted to make the most of him while she could. Hey, Ino, you hungry? Naruto asked, as if on her stomach growled loudly for the world to hear. Starving, she said. Ramen. Ino would never get tired of how Naruto's face lit up at the mere mention of ramen. Like a kid in a candy shop. Yes please. I'll go make us some, Ino said. You stay put. No running amok until Tsunade makes sure you're okay. Fine. Ino chuckled at his antics as she left. With Naruto awake, Ino felt a great weight lift from her shoulders. He was okay. Everything was going to be okay. As soon as she figured out how to tell him she liked him.